You're now entering open space, a place of mystery, truth, and untold stories. Like and subscribe if you're ready for what's coming. Scout, a black and white border collie with intelligent eyes and a lean, medium build, sat on the front porch of the small town vet clinic. People passed by without noticing him, but Scout noticed everything. For weeks now, he had been watching something strange at night, a flickering light in the nearby forest. It always appeared at 2:03 a.m. sharp. Tonight he decided he would find out what it was. As the clock struck 2 a.m., Scout's ears perked up. He could hear the soft rustling of leaves in the distance, and then a flash of light. It wasn't the headlights of a car. It was too erratic, like someone or something was moving. His instincts kicked in. Slowly, he padded off the porch and made his way toward the forest, the cool night air brushing against his fur. The mystery of the light was calling to him, and Scout could not resist. Scout's paws crunched softly on the fallen leaves as he made his way deeper into the forest. The mysterious light flickered again, this time stronger, like a beacon. He felt a pull in his chest, an unexplainable urge to get closer. The trees loomed taller, their branches tangled above, casting long shadows that seemed to move with him. His heart raced, but his curiosity overpowered the fear. He had to see what was causing the strange light in the middle of the woods. Scout stepped closer to the flickering glow, each paw careful on damp earth. The light pulsed rhythmically, revealing an old, weathered lantern hanging from a low branch. Inside, a softly glowing crystal hovered in midair. Scout circled it, nostrils flaring as he sniffed the air, trying to understand its power. The forest was silent except for the lantern's heartbeat glow. He felt a connection, as if the crystal called his name. As Scout continued to observe, the crystal suddenly pulsed brighter. It was as if it had a heartbeat of its own. A strange hum filled the air, vibrating the leaves around him. He could feel the energy radiating from it, pulling him closer. Without thinking, Scout reached out with a tentative paw. The moment his paw touched the lantern, the crystal flashed, and a beam of light shot into the sky, illuminating the forest in a brilliant, blinding light. The light from the crystal was so intense that Scout felt his senses sharpen. The world around him seemed to slow down as his eyes scanned the environment with acute precision. In the distance, he noticed a shadowy figure moving towards him. It was large, almost like a silhouette of something he had never seen before. His instincts told him to be cautious, but the curiosity that burned inside him made it impossible to retreat. Scout took a few steps forward, ready for whatever was coming. As the figure drew closer, Scout could make out its shape. It was not like any creature he had seen before. The being appeared humanoid, with a tall, imposing frame and glowing blue eyes. Its features were smooth and featureless, like a silhouette of pure energy. Scout's tail twitched nervously, but he held his ground. The figure stopped just before him, towering above the dog, yet it did not feel threatening. Instead, there was a strange, calming aura surrounding it. The figure tilted its head slightly as if studying Scout with curiosity. Slowly, it raised one of its arms, and the air around them seemed to vibrate with energy. Scout's ears perked up, and he instinctively took a step back, unsure of what was about to happen. But the figure's gesture was calm and deliberate. It pointed towards the glowing crystal that had drawn Scout here in the first place. A voice, clear and resonant, echoed in the dog's mind. "The time has come." The voice in Scout's mind continued, "You are chosen to protect the balance, to defend the realm of the unseen." The dog felt a sudden weight on his shoulders, but also a sense of purpose. He had always been just a simple dog, but now it seemed his role was far greater than anything he could have imagined. The figure stepped back slightly and raised both hands to the sky. The forest around them seemed to grow still, as if holding its breath in anticipation. A sudden gust of wind whipped through the trees, and the glowing crystal burst with blinding light. Scout's body tensed, every muscle ready to spring into action, but instead of fear, he felt a surge of strength. The figure, still with its arms raised, spoke once more. "The path you are about to walk will test your loyalty and courage." The ground beneath Scout's paws began to tremble as the light from the crystal surrounded him, pulling him towards a fate he could not yet understand. Scout felt the crystal's light envelop him completely, warmth flowing through his limbs as the familiar forest dissolved into a swirl of radiant colors and shifting forms. When the brilliance finally faded, he no longer stood among oaks and pines. Instead, he found himself in an otherworldly glade where the air shimmered with ethereal possibility. Strange, luminescent flora whispered cryptic secrets, and distant echoes beckoned him onward, promising both peril and enlightenment. Scout shook his head, disoriented, then took a cautious step forward. The glowing plants pulsed gently, reacting to his presence. Each footfall on the soft moss seemed to echo in the vast expanse. He sensed thoughts, vague shapes of emotion, emanating from the flora itself. Curiosity overrode fear as he followed a path of bioluminescent petals that led deeper into this enchanted glade. He knew he had crossed a threshold into the unknown. Deeper in the glade, Scout discovered a crystalline pool that reflected the star-filled sky despite the sunlit air. His reflection stared back, but with a flicker of blue light in his eyes, matching the crystal's hue. He approached the edge and inhaled the scented breeze, tasting hints of mint and ozone. From the water, a silent ripple formed shapes, images of distant lands and forgotten memories, beckoning him to explore beyond what he thought possible. A voice echoed in his mind once more. "Drink and see." Scout hesitated, glancing at the pulsing crystal lantern now hanging above the pool. The breeze carried a whisper of promise. Trusting his instincts, he bent his head and lapped a gentle sip of the shimmering water. The moment it touched his tongue, images flooded his vision. Scenes of a realm under threat, creatures running from shadows, and a call for a hero with a dog's heart and a human's mind. When the visions cleared, Scout felt new strength coursing through his veins. He shook off the last droplets and looked toward the tree line, where a faint glow marked the path onward. Without hesitation, he charged forward, paws pounding the soft ground. The forest seemed to open before him, gaps in the foliage forming a corridor of light. Every step felt purposeful. He was no longer merely a dog. He was a guardian destined to protect this realm. Beyond the trees, Scout arrived at a clearing where dozens of creatures, foxes, deer, birds, huddled in fear. Their eyes met his, and he sensed their turmoil. Darkness was spreading, corrupting their home. The creatures looked to him for hope. He barked once, firm and clear, and the lantern's light above pulsed in response. It was a signal. The balance had shifted, and Scout's journey had only just begun. Scout understood he must find the 5 shards of balance scattered across realms. Each shard held a piece of the world's harmony. He set off, following the gentle glow emanating from the first direction. The creatures watched him go, their eyes reflecting trust he never asked for, but gratefully accepted. With each step, the lantern's light grew steadier, guiding him toward trials that would test his newfound courage and loyalty beyond measure. The trail led him to a shimmering waterfall cascading into a glowing pool. The shard rested on a stone pedestal beneath the falls. Scout approached cautiously, ears alert. He sensed a guardian spirit in the water, watching. He stepped forward and dipped his paw into the pool. The shard floated to his paw, warm and humming. As he grasped it gently, the waterfall's roar softened, acknowledging his worthiness. Shard in paw, Scout felt a surge of energy restore a portion of the forest's glow. Leaves along the path shimmered golden, and creatures exhaled relief. But darkness still lingered ahead. The lantern's light dimmed momentarily, as if urging him onward. With renewed determination, Scout set off again, shards secured in a satchel of woven vines. He vanished down the moonlit trail, guided by the gentle pulse of his new companion. Scout paused at the edge of a cliff, gazing over a valley where darkness pooled like spilled ink. He clutched the first shard, feeling its warmth. Above, the lantern's crystal pulsed faster, signaling the next trial's direction. With a resolute bark, Scout leapt from the ledge, landing gracefully on a narrow ledge below. His journey to gather all 5 shards had begun, and he vowed to restore balance no matter the cost. Scout traversed the starlit valley, the first shard's glow tucked safely in its vine satchel. The night air was thick with frost as he approached a narrow rope bridge spanning a deep chasm. Each plank creaked underfoot, threatening to collapse into the abyss. With focused determination, Scout stepped onto the first plank, his paws firm and steady, lantern crystal pulsing lightly, guiding him toward the next shard hidden across the chasm. He pressed on bravely, determined to reclaim the balance. Emerging from the bridge, Scout entered an ancient canyon where wind-carved walls rose high above. His ears twitched at distant echoes, voices of the past trapped in stone. The lantern's crystal pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. He sensed a second shard hidden within the canyon's heart. Shadows danced across the rock face as moonlight filtered down. Undeterred, Scout followed a faint glow reflecting off damp stone, unwavering in his quest. Deep in the canyon, Scout discovered a hidden alcove where water dripped from stalactites into a clear pool. The second shard lay submerged on a rocky ledge. Scout waded in carefully, every muscle alert. His breath made ripples as he scooped the shard into his satchel. The pool's surface shimmered with restored light. He shook off cold droplets and sighed. 2 shards secured, 3 to go. Leaving the canyon, Scout climbed steep rocks until he reached a wind-swept plateau. The horizon glowed with dawn's first light. In the center stood a solitary obelisk carved with ancient runes. The third shard was lodged in a crevice half covered by moss. Scout leaped onto the obelisk's base, nudged the moss aside, and pried the shard free. As it pulsed in his satchel, the runes glowed warmly, granting him passage onward. With 3 shards secured, Scout surveyed the valley below. A storm was forming. Dark clouds roiled above distant peaks. He sensed urgency. The final shards lay hidden in the shadow of that tempest. Determined, Scout sprinted down the rocky slope, paws kicking up dust as thunder rumbled. His lantern crystal shone brightest against the gathering storm. Ahead lay danger and discovery in equal measure. The storm hit with full force, winds whipping Scout's fur as he sought shelter beneath an ancient oak tree. His lantern flickered in the chaos, the glow growing faint in the battering rain. The storm was no longer a mere obstacle, it was a warning. In the distance, Scout spotted the final shard, glowing faintly atop a jagged peak. With no time to waste, he braced himself, ready to face whatever danger awaited at the peak's summit. The climb was treacherous, the jagged rocks cutting into Scout's paws as he scaled the peak. Wind howled in his ears, the storm pushing him back with every step. But Scout's resolve was unyielding. He kept climbing, his eyes fixed on the glowing shard above. The higher he climbed, the more intense the storm became. At the peak, the shard hovered within a circle of stone, its glow blinding against the storm's fury. Scout leapt forward. With a final leap, Scout grasped the shard, the storm reaching its peak as lightning illuminated the sky. The moment his paws touched the shard, everything went still. The wind ceased. The rain stopped. The storm's fury evaporated as the shard's light surged into Scout, filling him with an overwhelming sense of power. The pieces of the shattered world around him seemed to reconnect, as if he had unlocked a hidden force within the storm. The storm was over, and the valley below lay calm, bathed in the first light of dawn. Scout stood atop the peak, the 5 shards glowing brightly in his satchel. The world has been broken, but now with the shards gathered, a new balance could be forged. The air was still, the only sound, the faint hum of the shards' energy. Scout turned, his eyes shining with purpose as he made his way back to the valley below, ready to restore the world. As Scout descended the peak, the valley greeted him with an air of quiet anticipation. The shards in his satchel pulsed, the energy they carried ready to reshape the world. He walked with purpose, knowing his mission was nearing its end. The ground below was soft, the earth now fertile, with the promise of a new beginning. Scout's journey was far from over, but for the first time, he felt the weight of the world's healing in his paws. As Scout approached the edge of the valley, a figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the soft morning light. It was another dog, a large, imposing Rottweiler with piercing eyes. The 2 locked gazes, and for a moment it seemed like time stood still. The Rottweiler spoke, his voice low and steady. "I've been watching you, Scout. You're carrying something dangerous." Scout didn't flinch, his eyes steady with resolve. "I'm not here to fight." The Rottweiler's presence was heavy, but Scout didn't flinch. He stood tall, the weight of the shards in his satchel grounding him. "I'm not carrying danger," Scout replied calmly, his voice unwavering. "I'm here to restore balance." These shards, they hold the key to saving this world. The Rottweiler's gaze softened slightly, but doubt still lingered in his eyes. You trust those shards too much, Scout. They could destroy everything. The Rottweiler stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. The world doesn't need more power, he growled. It needs understanding. You think the shards will fix everything, but they're just fragments of a broken world? Scout took a deep breath. The world is broken, but I can help heal it, one shard at a time. He stood taller, his posture exuding calm confidence. I know the risks, but this is the only way forward. The Rottweiler remained silent, his gaze unreadable. The Rottweiler hesitated, the silence stretching between them like a thick rope. Finally he spoke, his voice softer now. I don't know if you can fix this, Scout, but I'll help you. Scout's expression softened, gratitude washing over him. Thank you, he said, his voice steady but filled with warmth. The two dogs stood there for a moment, their resolve shared. The path ahead was unclear, but they would face it together. The storm had passed, but their journey was just beginning. Together, Scout and the Rottweiler walked back into the valley, the morning light illuminating their path. The shards pulsed gently in Scout's satchel, their power now aligned with his purpose. The journey ahead would not be easy, but Scout knew that with allies by his side, he would succeed. They reached the base of the mountain, the final shard still hidden, waiting for its discovery. The time for healing was now. The world, though broken, would soon be restored. Scout and the Rottweiler began their ascent up the mountain, the morning sun cutting through the mist. Each step was careful, the rocks slick and unstable. The shards in Scout's satchel pulsed with energy, guiding him forward. He glimpsed the third ally waiting in the high pass. An owl with silver feathers perched on a rocky crag. Its majestic gaze reflected the shard's glow, and Scout barked softly, the owl responding with a silent nod of agreement. United, they pressed on toward dawn's promise. Emerging onto a rocky ledge, Scout spotted dark clouds gathering over a distant valley. The shard's light pulsed urgently, signaling the next trial. The Rottweiler growled softly, sensing danger, but Scout pressed on. The wind howled, scattering leaves and dust. He clutched the satchel closer, heart pounding, as distant rumblings echoed like drums. Ahead, a narrow path carved into the cliff face beckoned, promising peril, but no alternative path forward. The path narrowed to a jagged ledge barely wider than Scout's paws. Rain began to fall, slickening the rock. He moved with precision, each step measured. The lantern's crystal glowed softly, illuminating the perilous route. Behind him, the Rottweiler followed, muscles tense. As they rounded a sharp bend, the cliff plunged out of sight, revealing a bottomless chasm. Scout paused, inhaled the cold air, and with unwavering resolve, continued onward. Suddenly, a crack echoed as the ledge shifted. Stones tumbled into the abyss below. Scout's instincts screamed danger. He darted across the most stable rocks, paws skidding but finding purchase. The Rottweiler bounded after him, firm and unwavering. Behind them, the ledge crumbled. Scout leapt to safety onto a wider outcrop. Gasping in relief, he pressed on, shards glow guiding his steps, the memory of near fall fueling his determination. Beyond the chasm, Scout emerged into a hidden meadow where twilight lingered. Fireflies drifted like stars at ground level. The shard's light merged with their glow, revealing an ancient altar carved into the earth. Vines wove around stone glyphs. Scout approached reverently, placing the fourth shard in a carved recess. The ground trembled and vines retracted, unveiling a secret passage illuminated by moonlight. His quest neared its end. Scout slipped through the secret passage, the moonlight cascading through the vine-wrapped archway behind him. Ahead, a narrow corridor of polished stone stretched into darkness, walls etched with ancient glyphs glowing faintly. His paws clicked softly on the floor as he advanced, lantern crystal pulsing with a steady rhythm. The air smelled of earth and magic. Scout raised his head, ears perked, alert and ready for his destiny now. The deeper Scout went, the heavier the air became. He could feel the weight of forgotten secrets pressing in from all sides. The sound of his paws on stone seemed muffled, swallowed by the oppressive stillness. As he rounded a corner, he saw a faint glow ahead. He paused, staring at the silhouette of a door carved into the stone. A whisper, almost inaudible, echoed from the darkness. Scout's fur stood on end as he prepared for what was next. With a slow, cautious step, Scout approached the door. He could sense something beyond it, a pull that felt almost magnetic. The carvings seemed to shimmer faintly under his gaze, alive with energy. The door opened with a low creak, revealing a cavernous room bathed in a soft, otherworldly light. In the center, an ancient pedestal stood, its surface covered with strange markings. A low hum filled the air, and Scout felt the presence of something powerful. Scout's eyes narrowed as he approached the pedestal. The markings on it were not like anything he had ever seen, even in his most extensive studies of the old texts. They pulsed with a rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. As he reached out a paw to touch the pedestal, the air around him thickened. A jolt of energy surged through his body, and the room seemed to spin. In that moment, he realized he was no longer in control. The pedestal was now the master. The world around Scout began to distort, colors swirling and warping as the energy intensified. His mind raced, but his body was frozen in place, trapped by the force of the pedestal's power. The air became thick, almost suffocating. A voice, deep and echoing, resonated through the room. "You are the chosen one, Scout. Your destiny lies within your grasp, but first, you must prove your worth." Scout's heart raced as he realized what was at stake, and the voice reverberated in Scout's mind, drowning out all other thoughts. "You must pass 3 trials, each harder than the last, to prove your worthiness." The room shifted again, the pedestal now surrounded by a glowing barrier. Scout's instincts told him to run, but something deep inside kept him rooted to the spot. A sharp metallic sound echoed in the distance, followed by a booming voice. "The first trial begins now." Suddenly, the room began to change. The ground cracked open, revealing a deep chasm that seemed to stretch forever. Scout's ears perked up as he saw the first of the trials, a terrifying, shadowy figure materializing across the chasm. It stepped forward, a low growl emanating from its throat. The figure was massive, with eyes that glowed a fiery red. "This is the first test. Defeat me, or remain trapped here forever. Scout's heart raced. He knew this was no ordinary enemy. The figure before him seemed to pulse with dark energy, its presence weighing down the air. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, his mind sharp and focused. He needed to think quickly. With one swift motion, he leapt across the chasm, landing with grace on the other side. The shadowy figure lunged, but Scout was faster, darting to the side and avoiding the strike. The shadowy figure growled, stepping back to assess Scout. Impressive, it murmured, but you are far from winning this trial. With a flick of its hand, the room changed again, the ground now slick with ice. The figure advanced, and Scout could feel the temperature drop sharply. He braced himself, knowing the next attack would be even more dangerous. The figure's eyes glowed brighter, and it lunged again, but this time Scout was prepared. With a swift move, Scout ducked under the figure's strike and darted forward. The ice beneath him cracked as he sped across the slippery surface. The figure attempted to follow, but its movements were slower, hindered by the ice. Scout used his agility to his advantage, darting circles around the figure, confusing it. With one final leap, he reached the edge of the room and bounded over the figure, landing safely beyond its reach. Scout landed beyond the vanquished figure, panting yet triumphant. The chamber shifted instantly, walls melting into endless reflections of himself. He stood in a hall of mirrors, each echoing a version of his past. The anxious pup on the porch, the determined guardian at the waterfall. A voice resonated, "Know yourself to claim your truth." Scout craned his head, eyes scanning the endless reflections, seeking the path through self-doubt to the reflection that held his genuine purpose. Onward. The first reflection of Scout flickered slightly before stabilizing. His younger self, trembling, faced a crowd of unknowns. The mirrored Scout nudged forward, watching the timid figure cautiously approach the group. "You've never been afraid of them," the voice whispered. "You feared their judgment." A weight lifted from Scout's shoulders as he began to walk towards the reflection of courage in the mirror, leaving the past fears behind. Scout stepped closer to the reflection of his past, the mirror rippling as he approached. With each step, his youthful form began to transform into the confident version of himself he'd become. The voice echoed once more. "You've already conquered the fear. Now walk with it." The mirror shattered, but Scout was no longer a trembling puppy. His reflection stood tall, strong, a leader, as he moved forward, ready for what came next. The fractured mirror continued to flicker, the pieces floating away like shattered memories. Scout moved forward, past the remnants of his past, now clearer and stronger than ever. His paws met the ground with conviction, and a new voice whispered from the depths, "This is who you were always meant to be." Scout nodded, no longer seeking validation from anyone else. He had come to terms with his reflection, now ready to face the world beyond the mirrors. Scout reached the end of the hall. The final mirror stood intact, but no longer reflected him. It reflected the world beyond. For the first time, Scout saw not just himself, but the future waiting. The voice that had guided him now spoke softly. "Now you are ready." The ground beneath his paws trembled as the path to the unknown opened up. Without hesitation, Scout walked forward, his purpose clear, his past behind him, and the future awaiting in his every step. As Scout stepped into the new world beyond the mirror, he found himself in a quiet forest bathed in golden light. The trees whispered and the wind carried familiar voices, echoes of those he helped and those who helped him. He paused, ears twitching. It wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. The forest was not a test, but a home. A place he had earned through every trial. Scout walked deeper, his heart steady, no longer searching, just living. Scout found a small stream and looked at his reflection. This time, it was just a dog. No illusions, no voices, no shadows, just him. He smiled, or something like it, and dipped his muzzle to drink. He no longer needed to question who he was or why he existed. The journey had stripped away the doubts. Now there was only clarity and peace. The forest embraced him like an old friend, and for the first time, Scout simply rested. Night fell. Stars filled the sky, and Scout lay beneath them, watching the constellations. They shimmered in silent rhythms, as if telling stories only he could understand. A shooting star passed overhead, and he didn't make a wish. He didn't need to. Everything he needed, he already had. Within and around him, the pain of the past, the questions, the battles, they were part of him, but they no longer defined him. He had become whole. A quiet dawn broke, golden light spilling across the treetops. Scout stood again, his silhouette outlined against the sky. He had been many things: lost, brave, afraid, wise. But now he was simply himself. A life lived, a journey taken, not for glory or praise, but for truth. As the forest stirred around him, he felt ready. The horizon called, not with questions, but with calm invitation. And Scout, with steady breath, stepped toward the light. Scout sat quietly outside the courtroom, his ears perked up. Inside, the jury was deliberating. Every sound from the room made his tail twitch. He could sense tension through the closed doors. Tim paced back and forth, glancing at Scout, who gave a calm nod. "He knows something," Tim whispered. Then the doors opened. The jury had a question. Scout stood up, alert. Something wasn't right. He barked twice, sharp, insistent. A storm was coming. The judge looked puzzled as the jury foreman handed over a note. "We'd like to review the video footage again," it read. Scout's ears twitched. "Video?" Tim frowned. He didn't know there was footage. The judge agreed. A large screen was wheeled in. The room darkened. Scout sat beside Tim as the grainy video began. It showed the alley, the attack, and then something odd. Scout's reflection in a shop window, watching everything. Gasps filled the courtroom. In the footage, Scout moved with precision, tracking the attacker, circling back, barking into the dark. But the most shocking part came next. A second figure emerged, hidden in the shadows. Not the man on trial, a taller man in uniform. Scout growled low, ears pinned back. The judge leaned forward. "Pause it there." Tim's heart raced. Scout barked again, one loud bark. A new suspect, a new truth. Scout leapt to his feet and ran to the screen, barking. The judge didn't stop him. The camera zoomed on the mysterious figure's face. It was faint but clear enough. Someone in the audience gasped, "That's Officer Cray." The courtroom exploded in noise. Scout barked rhythmically, then sat down calmly. Tim stared at the image. Stunned, the real attacker had been hiding in plain sight all along, and the truth was out. Officer Cray stood up in the audience, pale. "That's doctored," he shouted. But Scout walked up to him, growled, then sat unmoving. The silence was deafening. The prosecutor turned slowly. "We'll need to reopen the investigation," she said. The judge nodded. Cray tried to leave, but Scout blocked him. A guard moved in. Tim smiled weakly. Justice was turning. Scout wagged his tail once, then resumed his calm stance. As Cray was escorted out, the judge dismissed the case against the accused. "You are free to go," he said. Cheers broke out, and Tim knelt to hug Scout. Tears streamed down his face. "You did it, Scout." The dog leaned in, licking his cheek. Reporters surged forward, cameras flashing. Scout blinked calmly, unmoved by the chaos. Outside, the city buzzed with the news. A dog had exposed the truth. But Scout had one more mission. Scout walked out of the courthouse beside Tim, past the cameras and lights. Reporters shouted questions, but he didn't react. His focus was ahead, toward a figure standing silently across the street. A woman in a red coat. She made eye contact with Scout and nodded slightly. Tim turned, but she was already gone. "Who was that?" he whispered. Scout stared at the spot she'd vanished, tail low. Another story had just begun. That night, Tim couldn't sleep. Scout sat at the window, staring into the dark. Then he barked once. Tim joined him and saw a note stuck to the mailbox. "The truth runs deeper," it read. No signature, just an address. Scout sniffed it, then gave a low whine. Tim looked at him. "You want to go, don't you?" Scout wagged his tail slowly. They both knew. The case wasn't really over. The city still had secrets. The address led to an old apartment building in South LA. Scout led the way, nose low, ears alert. Tim followed, clutching the note. Inside, the halls smelled of dust and old secrets. On the second floor, a door creaked open. An old man peeked out. "You're the dog, aren't you?" he asked. Scout sat calmly. "She said you'd come." He opened the door wider. Scout stepped in first. Tim hesitated, then followed. The room was filled with photos, maps, and old police files. "I used to work internal affairs," the man said. "I tried to expose Cray, but I was silenced." He pointed to a folder marked Unit 9. Scout stepped closer, nose twitching. Inside were names, dates, connections. Cray wasn't alone. "They're still out there," the man whispered. Scout looked up at Tim and barked softly. The fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. Outside, Scout stood on the rooftop, overlooking the city. Lights sparkled like secrets waiting to be uncovered. Tim joined him, holding the Unit 9 file. "Are we really doing this?" he asked. Scout didn't move, just watched the horizon. Then he turned, gave a small bark, and walked toward the stairs. Tim followed, heart pounding. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was a mission, and Scout was leading the way. Tim and Scout began digging through the files every night. Names, photographs, hidden reports. It was all there. Scout would paw at specific pages as if he understood what mattered most. Unit 9, they operated above the law, Tim muttered. Scout growled softly at a photo of Cray with other officers. "You recognize them too, don't you?" The room grew silent. The past was catching up with the present. They needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. Scout led Tim to an abandoned precinct downtown. Dust coated everything, but Scout sniffed until he found a loose tile. Beneath it, an old hard drive. "No way," Tim whispered. They rushed back home, plugged it in. Files loaded slowly. Videos, voice memos, surveillance. Scout barked sharply. They found something. Something big. Something they could never unsee. The video showed Cray and 3 others threatening a young man in a dark alley. Scout growled low as the footage played. The timestamp matched a case dismissed due to lack of evidence. Tim leaned back, face pale. This is what they covered up. Scout walked over and placed his head in Tim's lap. It wasn't just a mission anymore. It was justice for the forgotten. And they had the weapon now. Tim sent copies of the footage to 3 journalists. Scout watched as each email was sent, tail wagging slightly. Now we wait, Tim said. Hours passed, then a phone buzzed. "This is real?" asked the voice on the other end. "Too real," Tim replied. Scout barked once, loud and clear. Within minutes, headlines exploded online. The truth was out, but danger would follow. Scout stared at the door. He already knew. That night, headlights lit up their street. Tim peered out. "We've got company." Scout stood by the door, growling. Outside, a black SUV idled. 2 men stepped out, suits tight, expressions colder than winter. They weren't here to talk. Scout tensed, ready. Tim grabbed the files. "We run." Scout barked once, leading the way. The chase was on. This time, truth was their only shield. They ran through backyards, Scout darting ahead like a shadow. Tim struggled to keep up. Behind them, shouts echoed. "Split up," someone ordered. Scout led Tim into an alley and jumped a fence. They burst into an old mechanic's garage. "Lock the door?" Tim gasped. Scout pushed a toolbox in front of it. Tim chuckled through the panic. You're not just smart, you're a genius." But Scout wasn't smiling, he was listening. From inside the garage, they could hear footsteps. Scout's ears twitched. He looked to a crawl space behind a shelf. "You want me to go in there?" Tim whispered. Scout nudged him hard. Just as the door rattled, they disappeared into the dark. The garage door slammed open. Flashlights cut across the room, but they were already gone. Inside the crawl space, Tim whispered, "How did you know?" Scout only blinked in the dark. The crawl space led to the sewer system. Tim gagged. Of course it had to be this way. Scout didn't hesitate. They trudged through muck and shadows, echoes of the city above. Suddenly, Scout froze. Footsteps. Someone else was down there. Tim turned off his flashlight. In the silence, Scout's low growl guided them. "Who's down here?" a voice shouted. Scout pressed forward. They had to keep moving. They emerged hours later in Chinatown. The streets were quiet, the neon lights cast in long shadows. Tim leaned on a wall, exhausted. What now? Scout looked toward an old bookstore. Tim followed him inside. An elderly man nodded. "You're here for refuge." Tim blinked. "How do you?" The man pointed to Scout. "He remembers me." Scout lay at the man's feet, tail wagging. A forgotten ally had returned. The old man, Mr. Zhang, once ran intelligence for civil rights cases. Now he was off the radar, but not out of the game. Tim showed him the files. Zhang nodded slowly. "You've lit a fuse. They'll come harder now." Scout looked up at him as if remembering the past. Zhang smiled. You're still the sharpest nose in the city." Outside, a storm rolled in. Inside, a plan began to take shape. War was coming. Mr. Zhang laid out a map of the city. Their operations have layers. You'll need to hit 3 points to expose them. Tim nodded. "And the proof?" Zhang looked at Scout. "He already found the trail. You just need to follow." Scout placed a paw on one of the marks on the map. Tim smiled. You're not just a dog, you're the reason I believe we can win this. Scout gave a small bark, ready. The first location was a warehouse near the harbor. Tim and Scout scouted from a rooftop. Cameras everywhere, Tim whispered. Scout sniffed the air and took off. Minutes later, a fuse box sparked, plunging the area into darkness. Tim slipped in through the side door. Scout was already waiting inside, tail wagging. You really do think of everything, huh? The dog just blinked. Inside, documents were hidden in hollow crates. Tim stuffed them into a backpack. Then came footsteps. Scout growled softly. They ducked behind shelves. Guards passed, talking about a transfer to the senator. Tim mouthed the word to himself. Scout nudged his leg, time to go. They slid out through a ventilation shaft. Just as they emerged, a spotlight flashed on. "Run!" Tim yelled. They barely escaped, ducking into an alley. Sirens wailed nearby. Tim collapsed against a dumpster. That was too close? Scout licked his hand. Suddenly, a voice from above. "Need a ride?" It was Maria, Tim's old friend, now a reporter. "Heard you stirred the hornet's nest," she smirked. Scout barked. "And you brought the smart one," she added, opening her car door. They didn't hesitate. In Maria's apartment, they spread the documents. Photos, names, wire transfers, evidence of a conspiracy linking high officials. "This is huge," she whispered. Scout pawed at a photo of a man in a judge's robe. Tim's jaw tightened. "That's who set me up." Maria looked at him. "Then we take him down." Scout stood, tail rigid. He was ready for the next move, and so were they. They leaked the first files anonymously. News spread fast. Protests ignited downtown. Scout watched the crowds from a rooftop beside Tim. "They're listening now," Maria said, handing Tim a flash drive. "This one holds the rest." Scout tilted his head. "We take it straight to court," Tim said. "No more games." The dog barked once, a signal they all understood. Go time. The courthouse steps were swarming with cameras. Tim wore cap low, a Scout at his side. "Are you sure?" Maria asked. "No," Tim replied, "but it's right." Inside, chaos reigned. Security checks, reporters, whispers. A guard tried to stop them, but Scout growled and blocked his path. "He's with me," Tim said firmly. They were ushered in. The truth was coming, and Scout was leading the way. In court, the flash drive was submitted. Tim took the stand, voice steady. "These documents reveal a network of corruption tied to Judge Marlowe." Gasps echoed. Scout sat quietly at his feet, calm and alert. The judge, Marlowe himself, shifted uncomfortably. Maria recorded every second. For once, the truth wasn't running. It was standing tall with a four-legged witness by its side. The courtroom erupted when the audio files played. Marlowe's voice, cold and calculated, discussing setups and bribes. He tried to object, but the damage was done. Scout stood and stared at him, unblinking. The room quieted. "You ruined lives," Tim said, "but you couldn't fool him." He pointed to Scout. The dog wagged once, as if to say, "Justice is watching." The gavel dropped. Marlowe was arrested on the spot. Reporters swarmed as Tim and Scout exited the building. Maria followed with the camera rolling. "You think this changes things?" she asked. Tim looked at Scout. "He does." Scout paused, looked at the crowd, and barked twice. The city watched. For once, not at a man, but at a dog who reminded them that truth has many voices. Tim, Scout, and Maria sat on the courthouse steps. "We exposed one man," Maria said, "but there are more." Scout lay at Tim's feet. tail gently sweeping. "Then we go after the next," Tim replied. A young boy approached, holding a hand-drawn picture of Scout. "He's my hero," the boy said. Scout licked his hand gently. The truth had a new face, furry, loyal, and unstoppable. News outlets ran headlines, "The dog that exposed corruption." Scout's image was everywhere. Maria organized an interview. Tim hesitated, but Scout sat proudly in front of the camera. "He's not just a dog," Tim said. "He's the reason we're still fighting." Scout tilted his head, camera light shining in his eyes. "Not all heroes wear badges. Some wear fur." "Oh," a powerful senator called. "I want to meet the dog," he said. At the Capitol building, Scout sat beside Tim, surrounded by bodyguards. "We need his instincts," the senator said. Tim glanced at Scout. "He's not for sale," he replied. Scout gave a short, warning bark. Respect was earned, not demanded. The system tried to use him, but Scout played by his own rules. Back home, Scout sniffed the mail. One envelope made him growl. Inside, threats. "They're scared," Maria said. "We're doing something right." That night, Scout stayed by the door, ears alert. They were no longer just chasing the truth. The truth was chasing them. But with Scout on guard, nothing would come easy for those in the shadows. A mysterious figure trailed them in the park. Scout stopped suddenly, growled, and blocked Tim's path. And the man froze, then disappeared into the trees. "Someone's watching," Tim whispered, but Scout wasn't just watching. He was remembering every scent, every movement. This wasn't over, it was just changing shape, and Scout was always 2 steps ahead. Scout padded silently through the moonlit park, senses razor sharp. Tim trailed just behind, every nerve alive. Ahead, in a clearing under an ancient oak, a lone figure lurked by a broken fountain. The stranger's hand hovered near a coat pocket. Scout's muscles tensed, fur bristling. He gave a low, warning growl, then barked twice, sharp and clear. The figure froze, astonished, eyes wide. In that moment, Scout protected them both. The stranger dropped a small device and fled into the night, startled. Scout lunged forward, catching the device in his jaws before trotting back to Tim. It was a miniature camera, part of the conspiracy's surveillance. Tim examined it, eyes widening. "They were watching us," he whispered. Scout sat calmly, crystal lantern on his collar pulsing faintly. The danger had escalated. Now it was more than evidence, it was survival. By dawn, Tim, Scout, and Maria convened at an abandoned warehouse. Maria uploaded the camera's footage, revealing hidden rooms and secret meetings. Scout paced, eyes alert. They watched as key figures gathered, plotting to silence the whistleblowers. Scout barked in alarm. Tim gripped his arm. "We have everything we need," he said. Scout wagged his tail once. The final move was clear, confrontation at the source. They drove in Maria's car toward the compound revealed in the footage. Scout sat watchful in the back seat. As they neared, guards patrolled the perimeter under floodlights. Tim killed the engine. Scout slipped through a broken window to scout ahead. Tim and Maria followed. Inside, corridors led to a central hall where conspirators gathered around a table. Scout's bark echoed, and he burst in, the lantern's crystal blazing. Confrontation exploded into chaos. Scout dashed between tables, grabbing documents and scattering conspirators. Tim and Maria secured evidence. Guards charged. Scout barked fiercely, buying time. The lantern's crystal flared and floodlights cut out. In the darkness, conspirators surrendered. Dawn broke as police stormed in. Tim held Scout tight. "You did it," he whispered. Scout's eyes gleamed with quiet pride. The rule breaker had rewritten the story, and the world was safer.